Welcome, welcome. Oh gosh, it's so nice to be together again with all of you. A good Erev Rosh Hashana. Exciting times, amazing times, happy times. Let's talk about it. I'm going to start with something that looks to me like a few of you were at a session I gave pre-Shavuos almost a year and a half ago. And I referenced a certain concept there that I want to apply to Rosh Hashanah. We understand that when our sages, divided up the parshios, the portions of the Torah, into a one-year cycle with incredible wisdom that only they, and among them prophets, could have, they did it in a way that, or perhaps Hashem embedded it in such a way that before each Yantif, before each important milestone of the year, we have the messages and the lessons that we need, particularly for that. And in that context, we understand that two parshas before, never the immediate parsha before, but always two parshas before Shavuos and Rosh Hashanah, we read the Tochacha. The Tochacha is something that most people relate to as the curses in Kisavo and the curses in Bechukosai. But that's just like negative thinking, because they list blessings too. So why don't we call it the parsha of the blessings? That's just to think about. But the Tochacha contains the historical reality that we have known studying history since the beginning of time, and that we painfully recognize today. The reality that when Knesset Yisrael, when the nation of our people are loyal and connected to the will of Hashem, we have terrific blessing. When we walk in the ways of God, we are blessed with peace, with sovereignty, with Israel, with Yerushalayim, with the Beis HaMikdash, with a closeness with Hashem. And inevitably, when as a whole the nation strays, then there's always been calamity, exile, suffering. And there's a lesson in that we need to take, both before Shavuos and particularly before Rosh Hashanah. And the lesson is perhaps deeper than we might simply take it to mean, and readily think about, okay, before Rosh Hashanah, this is something to shake me up. The Torah tells us, the first Tochacha, that in that state, when Hashem showers us with all of these blessings, and he brings us into the inner sanctums of Jerusalem and the temple, V'shachanti b'socha, and he places his divine presence within us and within our nation. The Torah tells us that Hashem says, I want you to know that I won't be disgusted with you. Lo sigol nafshi eschem. I won't detest you. Why should he detest us? We're talking about where we're doing good. And the Torah continues. And the Torah says, and if you don't listen to me and you stray completely off of the path that you need to be on in life, then all of these things are going to happen, resulting in all of the experiences of galus, of exile. And even though be'eretz oiveiim, even though you're going to be in the land of your enemies, subjugated to all the nations of the world, and the pains and the travails that's going to translate into, Hashem says, but don't think I hate you. Don't think I'm going to reject you. Don't think I'll be disgusted with you. I love you, and I will love you, in spite of the fact that I have to deal with you in a harsher way. So there's a glaring question which Rashi addresses, and the Bartanura, another Rishon, explains that Rashi. And the Chavetz Chaim Rosh Hashiva Zatzal derives from this interpretation of Rashi, this understanding of Rashi, a fundamental concept, not just in life and in human psychology, but fundamental to our ability to approach Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and the judgment that's looming. Rashi says, why does the Torah have to say that if you're good, of course I love you. And if I'm going to love you even when you're bad, so certainly I'm going to love you when you're good. So why do you have to tell me that twice when you're good? Answer. So I hope some of you might remember a little bit when we spoke about it. It's only a year and a third ago. The answer is because Rashi says it's human nature that that's the way we are. When we get very close with someone and we spend a long time with somebody, and even though we have a very good relationship and we enjoy that relationship for a long period of time, what could happen is what the world calls familiarity breeds contempt. I suddenly I take for granted all the reasons why I love that person, all the reasons I like them, and I start picking at the annoying things about them. And in this close relationship, all this little yucky stuff starts coming up. So Hashem says, listen, I know you're like that, but don't think I'm like that. I'm not. Why would we think Hashem's like that? So the answer Rashi is telling us is something that it took perhaps millennia for psychologists in modern psychology to understand it and coin the term. It's a term that many of us are perhaps familiar with already. It's called projection. It is human nature to project. Specifically, as the Gemara says, kol haposel b'muma posel. When we repudiate others, when we see a lot of negative things in other people, more often than not, it's because we are feeling it deep down in ourselves. And when we feel angry, when we feel stingy, when we feel impatient, we like to see that in everybody around us. We don't like to feel that I'm worse than everybody else, but we project our own flaws on others. From Rashi, we see that not only if we're not careful, if we don't check it, if we don't recognize what we're doing, the Bali Musar say, when you start seeing a lot of negativity in others, stop and ask yourself, are you perhaps a little bit deficient in that area also? And deep down, you're projecting. But not only do we project on others, we project on Hashem. And therefore Hashem says, I want you to know that you guys, you could be in a relationship and just start falling out for the wrong reasons. I love you, and I always will love you. On the second day of Rosh Hashana, we're going to read one of my favorite psukim in the Haftorah. We're going to read Haben Yakir Li Ephraim Yeled Shashuim. God tells us that the Jewish people are his precious, cherished child. Yeled Shashuim, we're a toddler that he coddles. Midei Dabri Bo Zocher Eskerenu Od. When he just hears our name, Ephraim, which is another name for Jews, us, Hashem's like remembers all about us. Rachema Rachamenu, and my compassion. I love you so much that I just hear your name and I want to forgive you. I want to have compassion on you. That's me. And that's me no matter where you are. I don't change. Two ideas I want to bring out from here. One is, and we'll get to that in a moment, this idea that we project our problems on Hashem and why that is critical to think about before Rosh Hashana. But before we talk about that, I want to underline in red 3 times this point. This is a concept in human psychology that's true about all our character traits. All of the things we see in us, we project in others. Certainly all of the negative things, to whatever extent we have it, if we're not careful and we don't think about it, we'll project it on others. And we'll project it on Hashem. So why does Hashem specifically choose here? The Rosh Hashiva Zatzal pointed out that here's where we need to know this lesson, perhaps more than anywhere else. Because this is one of the most core principles that is necessary for any growth in life and in Torah and in Judaism. And that is, we have to never lose sight of the fact that Hashem loves us to pieces. All of us, each of us. And even when we don't feel worthy of that love, and even though we're not worthy of that love, Hashem loves us. We say in Shir Amalos, in Tehillim 130, Ki imcho haslicho leman tivore. I'm sure many of you heard this from me time and time again, because I heard this time and time again from my Rabbi, especially during Elul before Rosh Hashana. Rabbeinu Yonah explains this verse to mean, Hashem, you are a forgiver. Imcha haslichos, you are the paramount one who forgives. Leman tivorei. Therefore, I can have fear of you. We're going to approach Rosh Hashanah and we're going to approach Yom Kippur. And there are going to be thoughts, perhaps, and there should be thoughts, perhaps, of yira, of increasing our fear on all levels, our awe, our reverence of Hashem. But that's daunting. It's scary. It could be debilitating. Only to the extent that we recognize that Hashem is such a forgiver, to that extent, we are able to allow ourselves to fear him. and to build more reverence and more fear, only to the extent that we keep reminding ourselves of his love, his unceasing, eternal, and infinite love of us. I applied this when I spoke on Shabbos to two areas. I applied it to slichus, to forgiveness. The men have already started slichos. The men have started saying slichos from now till Rosh Hashana. Most women don't have the custom to say slichos, and they'll join us on Yom Kippur. When prayer after prayer, tefillah after tefillah, every single tefillah, starting with Marav after Kol Nidre, straight through to Ne'ilah, but every single tefillah will be replete with, filled with slichos, asking Hashem for forgiveness. We're going to say, and the men are already saying, Kel Melech Yoshev al Kisei Rachamim. God is one who sits on a throne of compassion. He is Marba Mechila Lechotim Uslicha Leposhim. In the Kel Melech that we say again and again and again, we say Hashem is not just a forgiver. He's Marbe Mechila Lechotim. He overflows with forgiveness to who? To the righteous? To the Balei Tshuva? To the sinners. V'slicha leposhim. He's overflowing to those who rebel against him. Hashem loves us so much. What does it mean you're overflowing? Either you forgive or you don't forgive. Okay, so you forgive. What does it mean to be Rav Slichos, Marbe B'Slicha, overflowing and abundant in your forgiveness? It means you're forgiving so easy. You're forgiving for so little. We sometimes say slichus. We sometimes are going to say vidui when we get to Yom Kippur, or we say vidui now in slichus, and it's a little sometimes disconcerting for some of us when we start thinking about how much am I putting into, how much regret is there in my confessional, how deeply am I regretting, really feeling so terrible. Hashem overflows. Ultimately, we need to take what we can and move forward. But in order to move forward, we have to feel that love and that forgiveness. And we have to recognize the fact that Hashem is so loving that therefore, unlike human nature, he's quick to forgive the slightest thing. We read this week Parshas Bikurim. You're almost caught up, Sandy. We're about to go past you. We read this week the Parsha of Bikurim. Fascinating mitzvah. A mitzvah that all farmers who harvest their crop. What does it mean to harvest a crop? Until the Industrial Revolution, for all of human history, the bulk of all sustenance came from the crops. Most people made a livelihood as farmers, herders, and the crops determined your portfolio, your salary, your bonus. It all came from the crops. So you harvest the crops. You got your new bonus, your new package. And now what do? You go and take the first of that crop and you bring it to the Kohen in the Beis HaMikdash to show your Hakaras HaTov. Wow. We're going to show our Hakaras HaTov to Hashem for our whole livelihood. How do we do that? How much do you have to bring? Normally, the Torah has a shear, has an amount, has a measurement for everything. A kazayas of this, a cup of that. On Pesach, we're sitting there gouging our mouths, with the minimum shear. What's the shear of Bikurim? Nothing. No shear. You can bring the smallest amount. You can bring a kernel of corn, a stalk of wheat, as long as it's the first. And you go to Yerushalayim, and there were processions, and as they walked, they would have flutists playing, and as they passed each city along the way, the Mishnah tells us all the elders of the city would come out to greet them. Whoa! The people who are bringing Bikurim, the first fruits, are coming. Welcome, welcome. Wishing them well on the way to Yerushalayim. And he gets there. What does he do with it? He turns to the Kohen and he says, Hashem, you gave me my land. You gave me my crop. Thank you. Isn't that doesn't sound a little shallow? Doesn't that sound a little weak? This is the way we show our Akaras HaTov, our gratitude to Hashem for giving us our entire livelihood. So Rashi says, in this past week's parsha, he said, it means, but at least you weren't ingrateful. I was thinking this mashal. You have a child that does something, right? Imagine when we were children and our parents would tell us, say thank you. And we would go running out the door, thank you, half out the door. And my parent was probably, saying, wow, some thank you, right? That's the way they say thank you. But imagine if I was running out the door and I told her, no, I'm not saying thank you. That's worse, right? The whole Bikurim, Rashi tells us, it's just to show Hashem, I got a lot to say thank you for. And I got to figure out how I'm going to do it. And I don't know how to do it. And I don't even know how to start doing it. But I know I got to say thank you. And that's slichus, and that's vidui. And that's what we're doing when we say, I'm sorry. How quick did you say that? How sorry are you? But imagine if we don't even say, imagine the world that there's no sorry. There's no sorry. This is what it means that Hashem loves us. It's true with slichus, it's true with forgiveness, and it's true with tshuva. How do we do tshuva? How do we grow? It's overwhelming. It's daunting. So we always talk. And we always need to talk. And I know I always need to hear about this idea of small steps, of starting small. But in order to start small, in order to really deep down feel okay starting small, we need this focus. We need to remember how much Hashem loves us. That's why the Torah emphasizes, before we get 2 weeks before Rosh Hashana, we got to drill this in. Not the only lesson, but it's a core lesson. And we have to, if we would remember that, we would empower it. And it's not only, Hashem says, okay, I know you can't do very much, but just start. It's huge. The Bikurim was celebrated on the national level. You got to read the Mishnayos. Open up a Mishnah in the tractate of Bikurim and just read the last chapter. It's incredible the fanfare that these farmers got for a couple stalks of wheat to go and say thank you. And we look at it, I looked at it and I said, really? Because I'm missing it. I'm missing what Hashem missing Hashem's love for me. I'm missing how much Hashem is empowering me. Now let's go back to the other lesson of projection that we saved for after. Now that I have this focus, no, I don't have the focus. But now that perhaps I'm reminding myself that I'm going to think about this, I'm going to make this a focus, right? It's like everything in life. We think about something and then we lose it and we're back. It needs to be reviewed and reviewed. You need to bask, right? Not bask, bask. You need to bask in the love of Hashem. I knew that. I'm just waking you up. You need to bask in the love of Hashem. And the only way to do that is to think about this and dwell about this. And then you can empower those actions, as small as they are. Rabbi Miller, before we go back to projection, I put it in the chat box if you want to copy it. Rabbi Miller has a whole page and a half of, 15, 17, 18, 20 different examples of what's a small thing, just a small thing. He says, a beautiful idea. Do we know what the tribunal, what the court in the celestial spheres looks like? We talk about Hashem as a judge, and we talk about there are angels, prosecuting angels and defending angels, and right? Do we know what's going on up there? But our sages, and throughout the tefillahs, the machzor on Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur, we're going to invoke this metaphor, the metaphor of a courtroom. And in that courtroom, there are prosecuting angels and defending angels. Let's just talk about the defending angels. So who are the defending angels, says Rabbi Vigna Miller? Who's defending us? Our mitzvahs. The Chazal, our sages, use a metaphor. Every mitzvah we do creates an angel. And that angel is going to say, give him a break. Give Turk a break. Give him another year. He's a good guy. And he's going to try to drown out all those other guys that are against me. If I were to ask you, okay, we're going to have a court case up there. How many angels do you want on your side? How many angels do you think is enough? Is there any one of us that wouldn't say, I can't have them? There's no such thing as enough. I want to have every single angel I can out there. And Hashem gives us this mashal so that we realize every mitzvah done once, that doesn't mean you have a chesed angel and you have a Torah angel and you have a tzedakah angel. No. Every time you give tzedakah, angel. Defense attorney, that's empowering. Every time, Rabbi Miller says, you say good Shabbos to somebody, and it's not just a protocol, but you're actually thinking he should have a good Shabbos. Or not when you wished him good Shabbos. But you say good Shabbos, and you turn away, and you say, she really should have a good Shabbos in your mind. That's haftarecha kamocha. That's a mitzvah. D'oraisa, that's a Torah mitzvah. Check. Angel. A little guy there going, yay, Turk. Good guy, Turk. Good guy. It's so empowering because we think about all the things we're maybe not so good at. But I can do it once. I can do it now. So I posted that sheet there. We'll send it maybe tomorrow when I send the recordings out. I'll send it again. You may not like any of the examples, but it gives you an idea of how all the different ways, or many of the ways in which you can get them. Let's circle back now for our last segment. Let me circle back and let's talk about this projection idea. because it's important to understand this in another concept. Rosh Hashanah, the 10 days of Tshuva, Yom Kippur, it's all about getting ourselves into a better place, a higher place, a little bit of a higher place, a trajectory, a path towards a higher place. But how do we get there? So I always start with the Psalm, the Tehillim that we say every single day from the Rosh Chodesh Elul, from the beginning of Elul, past Yom Kippur, through to Shemini Atzeres. L'David Hashem Ori V'Yishi. King David tells us, and just learned so many angles on this, and we've spoken together about so many angles on this. But at the most basic level, the Gemara tells us, what does he mean when King David tells us that Ori V'Yishi, what is the light and the salvation? The light is Rosh Hashanah. Ori Zu Rosh Hashanah. One of the reasons we're saying this kapitel, this chapter of Tehillim, every day now, coming twice a day, up until and through the Yom HaNoroyim, is because it's referencing the idea that Rosh Hashanah is a light and Yom Kippur is a salvation. So what is a light? So we've spoken about this before. A light is what dispels darkness. Without light, there is darkness. In darkness, the Mesil Shuram tells us there are two problems. We don't see what's right in front of us. Something could be so clear, but it's dark. I don't see it. And in darkness, there's distortion. Rosh Hashanah throws a light. And for every single one of us that's going to be opening that machzor on Rosh Hashanah, even if we don't prepare before, but to the extent that we do prepare before, but even if not, those tefillas on Rosh Hashanah have everything we need to know about where we need to get ourselves. Rosh Hashanah shines a light. But even though there's a light there, how do I see? It's not completely simple to see even in the light. And let me explain. And I think this is an insight from this idea that we started off with, that we have to understand that everything we have, we project on others and we project on Hashem. Throughout Rosh Hashanah, the focus, the quintessential focus is on emes, is on truth. There is every Shabbos, on Shabbos and on every Yontif, we have a central bracha, one central bracha. We have a lot of brachas, a lot of tefillas, but in every Shemona Esrei, there's one bracha called Kedushas Hayom, one bracha that capsulizes Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh HaShabbos, Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh Yisrael V'Hazmanim. Each Yontif has a bracha, Shabbos has a bracha. There are brachas before and after, but that's the core bracha that describes the essence of the day. And each one is different. Shabbos is different from Yontif. Every Yontif is different from each other. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and the three regalim, each one has their own bracha. On Rosh Hashanah, 14 times, well, It's really 24 times. The quintessential bracha has within it 3 times emes. How do we view Hashem? Hashem has many descriptions. He's the creator of the world. He's the judge of the world. He's the compassionate one of the world. But in Rosh Hashana, we call him Elokim Emes. He's the God of truth. We say in that bracha, Ato Elokim Emes, you Hashem are Emes, Udvorcha Emes, and your word is Emes. V'tar libeinu li'avdecha be'emes. Purify us that we should have Emes. What's the connection? I think the connection is as follows. Hashem is the embodiment of absolute truth. And on Rosh Hashana, our sages, the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, the authors of those Shmona Esreis and those Tfilos, give us the truth about the world and the truth about God. But each of us sees it a little more or a little less, depending on what? Depending on how truthful we are. The more we are lovers of truth, the more we see truth in Hashem. The more we, or the more we are not as focused on truth, we'll fail to see the truth in Hashem and in what Hashem is showing us. We ask Hashem to purify us so that we can serve him with truth, so that we could see that truth, that we could receive the truth. To the extent that we are kind, we can see Hashem's kindness. To the extent that we are truthful, we can see Hashem's truth. Emes is not it's not a yes or a no. It's not, am I saying the truth or am I saying a lie? There are 1,000, infinite levels to a truth. And do I see it? Do I see it approximately? Do I see it precisely? Rav Pam, I was very moved when I read this years ago. Rav Pam once attributed his greatness in Torah, the Tarvadas Rosh Hashiva, who was a colleague of my Rosh Hashiva, Talmud of my Rosh Hashiva's father, took over Tarvadas. Rav Pam was one of the greatest Rosh Hashivas in America. He attributed his greatness in Torah to his mother's tenacity for truth. Truth was something not just that she lived by. The word sheker to her was a curse word. She wouldn't say the word sheker. She couldn't bring her lips to say sheker. It's a lie. She not only shook from the idea of saying a lie, it was so disgusting to her, she couldn't even say the word lie. She couldn't say the word sheker. Friends, do we not live in a world of incredible sheker, falsehood, deceit? It is astounding the levels of falsehood in every arena. If you would have asked us a question 5 years ago, could a people come to define left as right, right as left? Basic questions of morality, the most basic questions of identity, questions of we sit there in the world and the victim is the one that's committing genocide, and the people committing genocide are the victims, and and it's not just moral equivalency anymore. It's not just equating both, but as we go on and on and on, the world goes further and further. And you think it doesn't affect us? You think we can live in a world that on the macro level and on the micro level, we're surrounded with people who just, on every level, are the most deceitful, dishonest, bizarre. It's bizarre what people could say and not laugh at themselves. And on the smaller levels, fudging and finagling and right and just exaggerating and allowing ourselves to approximate and we all see things. We live in a world that has lost such an anchor of truth, and it affects our ability, and it erodes us and our sensitivities towards truth, and therefore it directly impacts our ability to fully feel, to more fully recognize the truth of Torah. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter says the cornerstone of working in Elul, the cornerstone of working towards growth in general and Rosh Hashana in particular, is to work on emes. There are many, many reasons why the more, listen, I'm not saying, we're all honest people here. If I got a shidduch call for any of you, right, I would say we're all honest people. But we all are living in a world in which there's so much more we need to work. And perhaps that's a sign that if this is what the world is so debased in, it's a sign that this is something that we need to raise. The and Jews in particular, the concept of arvus, the concept of connectivity that we have. It says the Vilna Gaon was studying the depth of Torah in Vilna, and Immanuel Kant was able to pull wisdom down and principles and concepts and genius. And when we raise ourselves, we raise the world around us. And to the extent that we raise ourselves, we see it elsewhere, and we see it in Hashem. And therefore, Rabbi Yisrael says in particular, I'll end with this idea that many things that one could work on, and all things that we work on are good. And all work has to be incremental and in steps. We got that, we know that, but we got to remind ourselves that again and again and again. But Rabbi Yisrael says key in corner is emes, because there are many ways in which if a person, to the extent that we imbibe a greater feeling of I have to not just speak truth, but live truth. My actions have to be true. It holds me to my word. It holds me to my commitments. It holds me to truth, justice, right? The what does that mean? Superman wasn't talking about not telling a lie. He's talking about living truth and justice. And to the extent that everything is baby steps, but every step we take to refine our truth, our emes, we allow ourselves to get a better vision. Rosh Hashana is a great opportunity for that, because there's so much that why don't we sometimes really think truthfully or really think truthfully about ourselves? We don't examine ourselves truthfully because we're afraid. We don't look at life sometimes truthfully because we don't want to come to the conclusions that a truthful, honest look is going to be. But on Rosh Hashana, that light is thrown. We leave, our physical worlds to a great extent. We surround ourselves in a spiritual cocoon, and we focus together on these beautiful messages, and there's a light. There's a light of truth that emanates. And we each have an ability to grab it according to the way we prepare ourselves to receive it. So if we recognize that I'm going to open myself to a truth, I'm going to open myself to a little bit more of a truth because I want truth and I love truth and I hate living a life that is lying to myself. So at least a little bit in a step. Summarize. I'm going to first focus, before I can think about analyzing myself and finding a truth that maybe I haven't found, I have to remember how much Hashem loves me. I have to remind myself how much He loves me. And I have to remind myself how much He's just waiting to forgive me. And I have to remind myself that I only have to do this to create step one, to lead to step two and step three. But right now, just step one. And I have to recognize the fact that we look around the world, we say, oh, the world is so deceitful. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem, we know the truth. We know it, but there are a lot of levels of knowing it. I'm sometimes afraid to let myself know it a little bit more because then I have to do a little bit more. So we have to push ourselves. Not too much, not too fast, but a little bit. Examine, open. Conclude with a bracha that we should be able to have the strength and the good health. First, to be able to make it to Rosh Hashana, make it through Yom Kippur, and make it with, please God, no headaches. Please God, give me strength, give me clarity, give me an ability to focus. And let's use that focus. Use it small, but like I always say, make it clear, make it small, but make it clear. Let's use these tools. Let's find the tools that work for us. And let's bring our people across the threshold. Let our growth be a schus, be a merit for the hostages, for the wounded, for the ill in body, and for the ill in spirit, for those in pain throughout the world, for those in need throughout the world. Let's daven for them. Let's daven for us. Let's daven for everybody all over us. And let's help bring about Hashana Tova V'yoter Mituka. Hashana that's good and sweet and more sweet, especially for Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael.